Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the Township of Woolwich budget meeting. Council needs to meet in closed session for a wee bit in a private breakout room. The live stream will remain streaming online with an informational screen. Once the closed session ends, Council will reconvene in open session and will begin this evening's public budget deliberations. We thank you for your patience. And I understand we don't have elevator music, so you're going to have to play your own. Can I have, at least Alex doesn't want to sing. Can I have a motion that the Council of the Township of Woolwich convenes in closed session on Thursday, January 13th, 2022 at 6 p.m. electronically in accordance with Section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of considering the following subject matters: a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and labor relations or employee negotiations, a labor relations matter. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Redekop. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Alex, can you then move us into a breakout room, please? Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome again to the Township of Woolwich Special Council Budget Meeting on January 13th, 2022. And thank you for your patience while Council was meeting in closed session at 6 p.m. Before we begin open session, I'll remind Council that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. And I will do a roll call of Council for the benefit of the public watching this evening. I'm Mayor Shantz and present and chairing this meeting, Councillor Martin. Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlehan.
Present.
Councillor Redicott.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. Can I get a motion that Council reconvenes in open session, please? Moved by Councillor Shantz, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That is carried. We'll just start with a land acknowledgement and a moment of silence. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we recognize the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples who lived here when settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. We'll just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we will get right into our budget presentation and deliberation. And we have Recreation and Community Services today and Fire Services. And we'll begin with Recreation and Community Services operating budget. And I would like to welcome Thomas Vanderhoff, Manager of Operations, and Jen Horndl, Manager of Recreation, to introduce the operating budget. Mr. Vanderhoff and Ms. Horndl, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
I'm mute.
There we go. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Council. Starting with Recreation and Community Services operating budget for 2022. As we look back on 2021 for Recreation and Community Services, the pandemic has been nothing short of a roller coaster. Between reopening and closing our facilities to adapting to ever-changing legislation, staff have continued to stay positive and provide crucial services to the public throughout the pandemic. As we looked forward to 2022, a budget was developed that was reflective of the current pandemic direction. However, the last month has yet again demonstrated how fluid we need to remain. RCS staff have developed a budget for 2022 that includes near pre-pandemic expenditures and revenues, with the understanding that we may need to continue to adapt as we have done for the past 2 years. The department continues to demonstrate fiscal awareness, implementing various mitigation measures to remain whole and provide necessary services while also monitoring expenditures. And for areas in which cost containment is limited, we may need to rely on safe restart funding as we have done in the past. The department will continue to operate in a similar manner as we did in 2020 and 2021, with hopes of return to more normal operations. Next slide, please. Jen, thanks. Also, starting with cemeteries and general administration budgets, very minor changes for these two areas for 2022 proposed. So staff have added a maintenance and supplies budget line to the cemeteries budget to better capture expenses that are that incur in that area, as opposed to previously capturing them under the parks budget. And general administration, staff have redistributed full-time salaries for the operations supervisor, project supervisor, and manager of operations and projects to general administration. Previously, some of these wages were divided throughout a number of township facilities, and this is strictly a redistribution of expenses, just an accounting move to simplify things. And then lastly, staff have added an equipment cost budget to capture all equipment related expenses. Again, these expenditures were previously captured under parks, whereas they're utilized throughout the entire department. Next slide, please, Jen.
Okay. Looking at the overall picture for 2021, both the Woolwich Memorial Center and the St. Jacobs Arena were operating at near pre-pandemic levels for ice and for some programs when our buildings were open. We did, however, have an overall reduction in revenues due to COVID capacity restrictions and additional subsidies given to minor hockey associations throughout the winter season. Staff continue to implement cost containment strategies wherever possible and will continue to do so as the pandemic continues to affect our recreation facilities. I would note that there is a change in reporting for minor hockey revenues for 2022 as per council direction to record subsidy cost. Council will see that the full ice rate charge is reflected at 100% in the revenue for boys and girls hockey, with an offsetting expense line that is reflective of the 33.5% subsidy that is received. As pandemic measures continue to remain in place, there will remain a need for additional part-time staff at both facilities to ensure regulated vaccine checks, contact tracing, and additional cleaning are being performed. Council should also be made aware that there is currently a shortage of aquatic staff across the province due to extended pool closures. Part-time aquatic staff wages have been adjusted both for the increase in minimum wage and also to attract and retain new staff. Plans are being put in place for accelerated training of new staff, partnerships with local boards of school boards, and networking with regional partners to address this issue.
Next, moving on to parks and trails / environmental. So the parks budget remains quite similar to 2021. Changes include an increase to both the parks and trails environmental area part-time salaries budgets. For the parks area, the department continues to shift towards the recruitment of more mature temporary staff. The proposed increase is the result of bringing on one additional seasonal staff person and also better aligning our wages with the other townships and cities in the region. Of note, we do receive an annual grant for hiring of students and young adults at $20,000, which helps offset this expenditure. The proposed increase in the trails and environmental part-time salaries budget will be utilized to hire a part-time staff person year-round to assist our environmental coordinator with volunteer coordination, tree inventory programs, tree pruning, Walter Bean trail development, inspections, and landowner relations. As the township continues to grow through development, the township now has in excess of 110 kilometers of trails. Additionally, reserve funding for the development of the Walter Bean Trail is to be spent by 2030. And with $300,000 remaining in funding, this project requires a level of staff attention to work through with volunteer groups and contractors that we do not currently have. Finally, the need for volunteer support of Tweak, Trees for Woolwich, and Trails groups and more continues to grow year over year. Larger and more projects planned for 2022, including the Elmira Nature Reserve and numerous tree planting events. Next, looking at the greening specific operating budget line. So of note, Council has added $100,000 in annual funding to the RCS budget by way of the Climate Action Green Infrastructure Reserve Fund for 2022. This reserve fund is proposed to be split as follows. So $100,000 in the RCS operating budget, $25,000 in the infrastructure services operating budget, and the remaining 104 in capital. So that total doesn't equal 100, obviously. That total equals 229 is what we have heading into 2022. So within operating, staff are proposing the following spending of that $100,000 in operating. So $15,000 for our tree giveaway program, $20,000 for park and open space greening, $20,000 for environmental consulting, which staff have already initiated that process, and we are waiting cost proposals for environmental audits of our facilities. $5,000 in electric equipment by infrastructure services and recreation community services. $5,000 for the green team to utilize for various greening efforts, corporation greening efforts. And then you will see $20,000 in there for the shared position. This discussion on this position and resourcing has continued amongst the regional CAOs, and hence staff will bring forward a report for proposed spending in this area at a later date. We are not at this time proposing that the total $20,000 be spent on this position, and we'll bring forward some additional info. If that, we may still have a request for spending in this area, and if there is remaining, that would likely be shifted to assist with capital projects as identified through the environmental consulting piece. Next slide, please, John. Settlement community centers, no changes proposed for 2022 budgets. Currently, all the community centers remain closed. With legislated closures, screening requirements, and capacity limits, operation of the centers has not been possible. Staff will continue to monitor and look to reopening these centers as we are able. Libraries, other facilities, and administration building. So limited changes proposed for these budgets. Each facility has proposed minor capital work. The staff have shifted some budget from maintenance contracts at the administration building to wages for contract cleaning staff. Additionally, staff plan to continue with asset management requirements through the completion of building condition assessments at $15,000. And lastly, $19,000. So this is a small accounting shift. So $19,000 in budget allocated for parking stall line marking that was previously and currently is in the IS budget under hardtop external contractors. That will be shifted to the RCS budget located under other facilities. And that is simply for us to better represent that those facilities are RCS facilities. So we're going to move those funds over to our budget from IS. And this is not reflected in the budget that's before you right now, but will be included in the final. And then last slide is you, Jen.
Thanks. Moving on to day camps and special events. Despite COVID restrictions, 2021 actually saw our second highest number of children registered in the summer day camp. We had 629 campers between Woolwich Memorial Centre and Breslau Community Centre. We are hopeful that as restrictions ease, we will be able to accommodate higher cohort numbers in 2022 and reintroduce before and after care, offsite trips, and additional swim times at the Woolwich Memorial Centre, and that reflects in the increase in expense that you would see. Staff are hopeful that in-person Canada Day festivities and other smaller community events will be able to move forward this year. However, we are ready to transition back to online or hybrid festivities as they are needed. Staff were really pleased with the participation from public with the addition of the diversity and inclusion and our truth and reconciliation events and our online content that were offered. We are making plans to expand these to in-person and hybrid events for next year. I would also like to note that staff were successful in securing 14 summer position grants for a total of $62,000 across the corporation in 2021. And we are anticipating similar support from the provincial and federal governments for 2022. And with that, Thomas and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you for that presentation and description. I'm sure Council will have some questions. And who'd like to start? Councillor Reddenkop, go ahead. You're muted though, Fred.
When the provincial government instituted that we need to be vaccinated to come into the arenas, we were worried for staff getting a lot of negative feedback, and I was just wondering how that went.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Luckily, we had very minimal dealings with irate customers. Our frontline staff were fantastic, and I think our customer service and facility staff also helped with that. So I would say 99% of people coming in were really grateful that we were doing it.
Yep, thanks a lot to staff. A follow-up question. Can either Thomas or yourself please talk about the new public space that is in St. Jacobs next to the St. Jacobs Library? Would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, through Mayor Shantz and Councillor Reddenkop, if it's all right with you, do you mind if I chat about that during our capital budget presentation?
Sure, no problem. Thanks a lot.
Who's next? No more questions? Councillor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Thomas and Jen. Thanks for the overview of your department. I guess one of the things, when you were developing the budget is it was clear that you were full steam ahead for, everything being back to normal. In light of what we know now, that things aren't normal, are there line items that you would adjust on the downward as far as, what kind of work and things that you can accomplish with, buildings being closed and programs shut down and things like that. I don't know what you would be closed down for now, like if it would be a month, or if, I don't know what people are talking about, but you clearly did this budget before anybody knew that this was going to happen. So what would you anticipate as, like revenues are going to be affected? Here we're losing prime time, ice times, rentals, and I'm just wondering if, a full ramp up, if it's not going to be a full ramp up, clearly what you're thinking on that. I know it's not a very clear question, but.
I can start, Jen, if you'd like, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Merlihan. Yeah, you are right in that we developed the budget a month ago as we were kind of trending in the right direction. In the last couple of weeks, has thrown a bit of a curveball at us. Based on schools reopening in the coming week, remaining on target with that. We are hopeful that we will be reopening our facilities on the 26th of the month. And if not, as we've done, as Jen and I have mentioned, as we've done over the past 2 years, staff have worked to save utilities where possible. And even though revenues have not been where we would like them to be, the department, for the most part, especially in 2021, I think we've demonstrated that we're able to, find savings in utilities and areas of that sort, staffing, that sort of thing, to kind of offset and make sure that the budget is fairly balanced. And if not, then we do have the Safe Restart funding to rely on. But yeah, in short, we don't know which direction we're going to go, if we're going to continue to remain closed or we're going to ramp back up again in 2 weeks. So it's difficult for us to forecast that one way or the other.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, as a department, you would think that the money that you're budgeting, even though we're closed right now, is worth pushing forward with that same amount.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. So yeah, that's the plan. We'll try and realize savings where we can, as we've done over the past 2 years, similarly.
Okay. Now I just have like some little things. I'm just going to go.
Pat or
Yep.
Councilor Merlihan, before you go on, David, Mr. Brenneman, would you like to make some comments? And I realized that I didn't give Mr. Petherick an opportunity to say anything at the beginning of. No, he's okay. Okay, David, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate if Richard spoke to the fact that due to his foresight with holding back some of the Safe Restart money, I believe that's another way in which we can balance any sort of issues. I think we need to address that portion of Councillor Merlihan's question. If you could, Richard.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz. So I think the challenge, and Councillor Merlihan, really kind of hit it on the nose. This is really difficult year for us to try to figure out what exactly is going to happen, because this pandemic still continues to trudge on. Obviously everybody was hopeful as we were developing this budget that we were going to be in a different position. However, I think as Mr. Brenneman said, we do have some additional COVID recovery funding, because I'm making sure I got that grant correct. We still have money, about 180,000 that hasn't been allocated. We're trying to carry that forward from 2021 into 2022. And so 180 has not been included in the budget so far. My concern though, in trying to figure out how to adjust the budget, with the revenue projections, because you're going to have that downward pressure, but I think our expenditures, other than some of the staffing costs, are going to be very similar, just because ICE is still in, we still have utilities that are still going. So the costs are not going to really be going down in the same proportion as the revenues are. So for me, I think one of the things that I'd be really kind of cautious about is that as we start to lower that revenue, that puts a pressure on the ultimate net levy that's going to be, net levy we're going to end at the end of this process. But for me, I think one of the things that I think I kind of started to talk about on Monday was, especially with the COVID recovery funding that we do have, is like having this revenue in right now sets us up well for 2023, even though we may be able to sort of balance ourselves off if we leave the revenue recreation and sort of supplement it with the grant funding that we currently have. It is going to set us right in 2023. I think if we were to shove the money in substitute for our revenues, I think we're going to be in a harder spot to get where we are in 2023. Also saying that, I'm still hoping that we're going to receive additional COVID funding. As I said on Monday, I can't guarantee that's going to happen. We don't really know what's going to happen, but there's still a possibility that we may get something again from the province.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Go ahead, Councilor Merlihan.
Yeah, okay. I'll just go through just some of my notes. The one thing that I was having a little bit of difficulty with, like on the staffing side, was because you clearly did move people around in different departments from other years. So getting a grasp on why all of a sudden it shot up 300,000 in staffing in one area, was a bit of a concern. So as far as the staffing, is it like the amount of money across the board? Is it more or less whatever the wage increase was for 2022? Is that basically just been added from 2021? I think it was like 1.5% or something to that effect.
Yeah,
Are you asking if there's any staffing personnel increases in this budget? Is that sort of your question?
Well, that'll be my next question, because and Thomas already answered that with the one position. But I was just more or less asking if it was just the typical raise that everybody gets added on to the staff that we have now in 2021, and then plus the new person you were talking about in your introduction. Is that basically all that's in staffing?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, yes, correct. It's just a redistribution of the funds to the general administration of those staff.
Okay.
So that the total remains, similar, including the small increase. Richard.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, if I may, yeah. So there were two positions that that were I think, as Thomas alluded to, were I would say they were kind of like buckshot across a multitude of budget areas, like cemeteries, Woolwich Memorial Center, St. Jacobs Arena, like all of the community centers, the admin building, the library, and basically all of those. There were two positions. All of those were kind of really captured then into the admin, because we just didn't see it didn't make as much sense to do that buckshot. We thought it was not as clear to council. But I think from a staff cost perspective, and especially if you're looking at the summary for recreation and community services, and you're looking at that staff cost line where 2021 budget to the 2022 proposed budget, I can see that's about a $340,000 increase. But I think also what's in that is some of the part-time wages that you're seeing going up in the areas. I think looking at what WMC has a $50,000 increase to part-time wages, $75,000 in pool. There's some increases in the WMC part-time for customer service, as well as in the parks department as well. So I think that number is really more driven by the part-time staff than it is it's not really a full-time staff. It's the part-time staff that are what's really driving that number up.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And will that change based on whether or not we're shut down or not? Like right now, I guess we're not paying any people to use the pool or anything like that. So yeah. Okay. So we do have one person in parks, and is there another position you were talking about in the greening, or was that a partial person perhaps?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councilor Merlihan. So both part-time salary additions. In parks, we have added a fifth student or a fifth student that we bring on, and then for the we're calling it Trails Environmental budget now. Just an increase. We've always had part-time salaries in that budget, and there's an increase for some added support to our environmental coordinator.
Okay, so, but that wasn't a full-time position, that was just some part-time wages?
Both,
Okay.
yeah, both part-time.
Okay, that's fine. Under the general admin, I was just wondering, the training and everything went up to 20,000 this year, which I don't know. I was just wondering, is there particular programs that are earmarked for that money?
Through your response to Councilor Merlehan. We have had over the past 2 years, as you can imagine, there's been very limited training that staff have been able to partake in. As well, we have had significant turnover of the department operations side. So we have over half of our staff that are new within the last 2 years. So some training that needs to happen for those guys.
Okay, sure. One little funny thing with the telephone and it's /Blackberries. We could probably take that off of our budget now officially.
I still have a BlackBerry.
Do you really? Oh wow! I have a bunch of dead ones, but. If you have somebody else that wants to ask a question, fine. I really don't have that much.
Okay, why don't you regroup and we'll let Councillor Shantz have a go.
Sure.
You stole my thunder with the BlackBerry, but thank you. through you to Thomas. I know that when we talked about the contract for grass cutting, and this is under the cemeteries, I guess, but I think it was a general contract for a lot of grass cutting. And we were talking about whether we were going to extend that if it worked out for both sides. Was that contract written like that, or is it going back out for tender completely?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz, I would have to take a look back at the tender from 2018, I believe. However, having said that, we have been very pleased with the service that we are still receiving from Mitchell Property Maintenance, and that will carry forward. This is the last year, as you've noted, so we'll revisit that. And if it's as I mentioned, we are happy, and if it's staff, recommendation and request to extend the contract, we can bring that back forward to council. We will do that in the first half of 2022 as well, too, to make sure that we're set up for 2023 and beyond.
Okay, I made that suggestion back in whenever the contract came up the first time, and suggested that if we are good with what they're doing and happy with what they're doing, then maybe we can just extend the contract rather than send it out for an RFP, and that could possibly gain some brownie points as far as going forward. The other question I have, and if it goes down into parks, and we've been chatting back and forth on email on this this one box that is there. And how do we decide when we're going to do LED lighting and things like that? And I'm referring strictly to the Bloomingdale. I think it's the one outside light and then the ones underneath the cover there. When and how do we decide to do that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz. So developing our minor capital budget, truthfully, we kind of do a township tour every year prior to budget as we're putting that together. And then also specifically with LED lighting retrofits, we look at those when we have, burnt out bulbs or fixtures that need to be replaced, which is I believe the case in Bloomingdale. So just take advantage of that opportunity. Okay,
the reason I asked that is because when I looked at the Bloomingdale, the actuals, We've spent $2,500 on electric or hydro, and that would include the ball diamond lights. And I think this retrofit is going to cost us $5,000 for the picnic shelter and the one light. So just didn't seem to add up to me. But if the lights need to be replaced, then I agree we should do it with LEDs.
Okay.
I'll let somebody else go again while I continue on through.
Okay. Councillor Merlehan, are you ready to jump in, or Councillor McMillan? You haven't had a chance yet. No, you're good. Go ahead, Councillor Merlehan.
Okay, thank you. Through you, then I guess back to Thomas and Jen. Just I guess general theme in the community recreation centers. You mentioned that they've been closed, and basically I was looking at, and this is all like pretty small potatoes stuff, but the operating costs versus revenues, which generally are never going to work out to even, or even in the best of times. And it's not that I have a problem with the Conestoga Rec thing, but I think almost every budget I do say something about the Conestoga Rec Center, and it just it jumped out at me because there's like maintenance and supplies of like almost $2,000, and meanwhile there's like I think there's maybe $2,000 of revenue. It just looks like nothing is happening there. And then you look at the maintenance and supply of a bigger center. I think Heidelberg was like $200, and the maintenance and supplies line item. I'm just wondering, what are those when centers are shut down and there aren't a lot of events? I think probably Breslau was one of the ones that had more rentals and such, but these other ones, I don't know what happened there. Can you just speak to it? And it doesn't have to be specific or anything, just in general.
Yeah, through your motions to Councillor Merlehan. Yeah, so looking at Conestoga Recreation Center as an example, we have extremely minimal budget lines that we have to work with when we're looking at any repairs to that facility, which do happen because they are, the buildings are still running. We have HVAC equipment running, that sort of thing. So $1,500 for Conestoga, for example, is just to cover any of those unexpected expenses.
Oh, I was thinking that maintenance and supplies was the money that was spent for whatever the maintenance and supplies. It wasn't or is that a maintenance line item? Is that?
Yeah, so maintenance and supplies for Conestoga Recreation Center, that $1,500 would be used to cover any repairs and maintenance.
Okay. I might have been reading that wrong. Or did you spend like almost $2,000 last year in 2021 on that building? Is that? Like, there's nobody renting it anymore? Is that correct? Like there was some daycare or something in there at one point.
Yeah, that's correct. At one point there was. It's been a number of years since then. We are, our trails group is using it currently for storage. Yeah, that's all it is being used for at this time.
Okay. Okay, no big deal. I was just going through, I saw we have $9,000 on the Elmira Library retaining wall. And is it like, I'm only hesitating. It's not, life or death or anything, but I'm thinking we're going to have an Elmira streetscaping plan coming forward. It would be nice to actually see the entire Elmira Library be redeveloped into some sort of nicer area for the public. And I'm just wondering if that is something that we could put on hold until a plan, if there's any plan for that public space downtown to do something nicer than just fix a retaining wall, or if it is a retaining wall that is creating an urgent public safety problem, then that's another matter. But can you speak to that particular project?
Yeah, through your motions to Councillor Merlehan. I guess addressing the first piece with regards to the streetscaping, that sort of thing. That's definitely something we could work with infrastructure services and planning on. I can't speak to, I'm not sure of exactly how that would be funded. But the $9,000 is for the retaining wall. Is we've done a few repairs over the last year, but we do need to rebuild a majority section of it just due to safety, and it's not in great shape. But that library outside maintenance also covers other repairs and maintenance to the facility. You know, in previous years, maybe not last year in 2021, but previous years to that too. There are always you know, repairs and maintenance that's required on the building.
Okay, thank you. And then the other project you have replacing there's a sidewalk or something, replacing concrete by the admin building. I know just working on with the region on the reconstruction, that road will be reconstructed, I think 2025. And so I think with that, the sidewalks and everything will be replaced, and curbs will be replaced along from Arthur to Snyder. I'm just wondering if going and replacing the sidewalk now with new concrete is kind of throwaway money.
Give me 1 second here. So on Church Street, the area that we are proposing to do some work on is there are pavers right out front of the building. Previously, there were 3 trees in that location as well too. So we were looking to replace those pavers to do some concrete work, a nice entrance. However, with that being said, we will make sure to connect with the planning services and infrastructure services and possibly and then to the region through them to see where the road allowance ends or where it will end, and then you know, if at that point it makes sense for us to move forward with that work, then we would, and if not, then I suppose we would wait until the road is reconstructed.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Just wanted you to be aware of that. That's all. But as far as the rest of the RCS staff and everything, I haven't really been in too often. I have to get back to swimming this year. It's on my to-do list. But you know, the staff have been great, and I appreciate it every time I go there. That it's safe and clean and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it's been hard work for the last couple of years, and I appreciate the effort of your staff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Does anyone else have questions? Councillor Shantz, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And this is just nickel and diming, but some questions that I do have. Bloomingdale and Maryhill both have phones, and we do a central booking now, do we not? And why would they need phones at those facilities? And then to add to that, Heidelberg, we have $250 in there for advertising, and I was wondering what that was, and what the need for that would be.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I can answer those. We do have landlines in those 2 facilities. So that's the phone charges, just in case there's an incident or accident during a rental. And I believe the Heidelberg advertising is kind of an offset to help the Recreation Association if they have any photocopying or any incidentals that they want help with, like flyers for community events and things like that.
Then so if we follow up on that, Heidelberg does not have a phone. So it seems kind of odd that that one would not, at least there was no line on there for a phone. So that's what got me questioning why the other facilities needed that.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz. Yeah, that's something that we can take a look at for sure. Obviously, or we would need to keep some funds in that in that budget, or we would propose that we keep it as is, but staff will take a look at that in the first quarter of 2022.
Yeah, like I said, it was just nickel and dime, but it just kind of stood out to me that some of them had phones, some of them didn't. And I know previously that Bloomingdale used to book their own, but I know they're not booking it anymore. So I didn't know what the need was. So that was a question.
Anyone else? Councillor Martin, I don't think you've had a chance. Did you have anything?
I guess I wish we were through COVID, and then our revenue lines would be more realistic. And I know that's not going to happen. So my concern is that we're going to be subsidizing recreation over $3 million this year. By the time we're done, that's a concern for me. If I nickel and dime and want to chuckle, I would go to cemeteries, and grave restoration is $1,500. We took that line out a few years ago and we went line by line by line to save some money. I'm only kidding there, but that's true. And the fact that we're putting in our greening climate $100,000 is troubling when budgets are tight and we're short money already. Because I think we said the other day on Monday that we've still got $93,000 set aside for that. So I'm not sure why we would dump in another 100. I think those are about the only things that I had marked down.
Okay. I'm not sure that you needed a specific, did you have a specific question in there, or was it more just commentary, I think?
It was more commentary because I think in a year like this, when revenues are down and we're looking at fairly good steep tax increases, I think you got to look at these things. I don't expect it to change much, but I still have to bring it forward because that's the way I think. And if we're going to, I always say I'd like to spend money, get value for my money. And I'd like to spend money like it was my own. And when I look at some of the things that we do at times, I'm not sure we're getting value for it. Money's in for the Elmira Nature Reserve. They sold us on that project on the basis that they wanted to do it and make it a community thing. And they were here twice and said they're not asking for any funds. And they were doing it on their own. So I would question why we're funding anything until they run into a problem, if they would. I know I was criticized the last time a while ago when I brought that up, but staff did assure me that it was a very legitimate question. And I know that down the road, time, we're probably going to have to fund some of it, but we're just early in the project. And if we start funding and putting money towards it now, we'll be doing it every year, and it won't be a community project.
Okay, thank you. Are there other, excuse me, are there other questions on the operating budget? Councillor Merlan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. I guess to Councillor Martin, I'd be interested to hear your proposal for service cuts anywhere in rec and facilities. An actual, you've gone through the numbers and you can point to specific things here that we can actually talk about. I mean, I'd like, if you could be more specific about, service. If you don't want things subsidy, you can come out and say you want to get rid of subsidies, or you want to get rid of swimming for kids, or anything. I mean, take a look at the books. I'm game for whatever. I'd like to hear from the rest of council about stuff. So start a proposal.
Okay. I think one comment that I would make about recreation, or a couple of comments. You've had the hardest, I think, you received the hardest end of COVID in terms of managing the recreation facilities and the recreation programs. And I think you've done a great job of balancing that in a very difficult time. Recreation is a service that we provide to our residents, and it's a tough one. You know, it's not a complete user pay. I think every municipality provides some of these services and is expected to provide it, and our residents expect it. And so I do thank you for your attention to making it run well, especially in these difficult times.
Thank you.
Scott, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, just to piggyback on that, being a part of a user group of the WMC, I think that I have to jump in and just say how incredible it's been working with staff, scheduling, balancing the schedule of all the different groups, making it work, doing it, getting it completed, and then having the province change the goalposts and moving and having to do it again and having to do everything 7 times, and always with a positive attitude and an energy of let's work together and do what's best for everybody. And I just can't say enough how great it's been working with the staff at the WMC to do that. The one question I did have was, now that we can see the ice rentals and how that breaks down, not just as a cost, but with the actual full cost, and then what our subsidy is, I just wonder how council feels about that number. It's a pretty big number. And I think that we have had some user groups like the gymnastics club come to us and ask for money for the first time. And it was great that we were able to give them a little grant. But, you know, if you compare the amount of subsidy that we're giving to the Woolwich Gymnastics Club compared to minor hockey, is that, you know, are we comfortable with how that amount of subsidy is being divided up amongst our constituents? So not a question for staff, but just for the rest of council.
Is that a discussion council wants to have today? No. Okay. Councillor Merlehan, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, just general comment on that. I'm happy with the subsidy where it's at. I think it's important to make sure that youth activity is as affordable as it can be, even these rates are sometimes not affordable for everybody. But there are other options that can make it available for kids. So I think to have our kids and the opportunity to be active, I think is very important to the general well-being of the community. And I would be happy to leave the subsidy the way that we have it right now.
Councillor McMillan.
I actually agree, and I think the subsidy is good where it is. Are we interested in having similar subsidies, similar opportunities for kids who play soccer, baseball, gymnastics, art and dance, things like that?
I guess I would ask probably Ms. Horndal, do we subsidize, I believe we give a subsidy to soccer as well, but I could be wrong on that.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, we do have subsidies for all of our affiliated minor sport groups. So that would be baseball, soccer, I think anyone that uses our facilities. There is also a subsidy program wherein it's for adults that people can apply. They're vetted through Woolwich Community Services, where they can receive swim passes or fitness passes here for the facility if they're not able to afford them. And then Woolwich Community Services administers the Jumpstart program on behalf of the township. So that provides funding for kids to be able to play in sport. And I believe Kelly and Tina also are able to sometimes extend that to arts and culture programs as well. But I can certainly bring back more information on that if council desires.
Thank you. I think that might be a discussion, unless there's something that's going to change in the budget, that might be a discussion that we could have at another meeting regarding how we subsidize all our youth groups. And it sounds like we've got some things in place. Councillor Chauncey wanted to comment.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it, baseball and soccer are probably a little bit more affordable than hockey because of just the sheer cost of the equipment and all of that. So I can see why we would subsidize that a little bit more. I guess that we've got 25,000 or probably 35,000 people in the township, and maybe 20,000 of those are listening right now. I'd like to put a plug in for volunteers. I think we're really lacking in the volunteer area, and that's costing us and causing us to have these budgets so high, because now we're paying staff to do what a lot of volunteers used to do. And I would like to have a discussion sometime on how we make it more easy for a volunteer to volunteer and actually help out. And I think sometimes we put up so many barriers that people just don't want to be bothered anymore. And I think that could really cut some of our costs if we can get some volunteers active in the communities.
I wonder if, are we keeping track of any of this? I'll ask Clerk Smith. Yes, for future agenda items. Excellent. Jeff assures me he's keeping track of all of these things for us. Okay, is there anything else on the operating before we move on to capital? Okay, let's move on to capital then. And who wants to kick that off? Mr. Vanderhoff, Ms. Horndal?
Yes, I'll run council through the capital budget. Jen is going to do the PowerPoint presentation for me. Wonderful, thanks, Jen. Through you, Mayor Shawns, to council. So yes, moving on to 2022 capital budget. So staff have before council this evening the 2022 capital budget, which includes parks, facilities, and major capital project areas. Continuing with the same focus as 2021, the proposed capital budget and 5-year forecast are concentrated primarily on township facilities. Of the parks projects proposed, $458,000 of $775,000, or 60%, is funded by way of donations or grants. Property maintenance project total is approximately $1 million. And finally, the one major capital project proposed for 2022 is the renovation of the Maryhill Fire Station. This single project, budgeted at 1.4, accounts for the majority funding of the 3 areas. Bringing council's attention to the projected 2022 reserve fund balances document that's in your budget package. I'll give you a sec to find that. You will notice deficit positions projected in both the park funding and property building reserves. So a transfer of $250,000 to the park funding reserve will occur in 2022, with a second installment of $250,000 to occur in 2023, both from the Southwood development. So this reserve is forecasted to balance in 2023, and hence, as a result, though, staff will need to look to other funding sources to develop parkland within Southwood in 2024 or later, likely a couple of years later once development is complete. The property and building reserve is also forecasted to be in a deficit position for 2022, primarily the result of the major capital budget. And with that, we'll move on to Parks capital project highlights. Jen? So notable projects for 2022, Bolander Park Church Street parking lot paving. So this is the upper parking lot. So just in tandem with the Church Street reconstruction. Gibson Park tennis lighting at $32,000. Replacement of the existing Trilon style towers that we have. We have had some fail and collapse over the last year or so. So looking to replace those with just a simple utility pole with LED light fixtures, and those have a 50+ year lifespan. And then St. Jacobs Library Park development, and I will speak to this at the request of Councillor Redekop. So this is the development of the township property next to the St. Jacobs Library in collaboration with the BIA. And the park revitalization includes a picnic shelter, accessible walkways, furniture including seating, an art display, and general landscaping. The idea for the space is for people though that are visiting the village and grab a bite to eat. They have somewhere to go enjoy it, and also for people that work in the core there, somewhere to enjoy some quiet time. There is not a park in St. Jacobs that's that close to King Street, so it's going to kind of serve that purpose. And then we have playground renewal and trail development funds as well too, as we typically carry in our capital budget at $25,000 to do some playground work. Bowl under swing material, we're looking to replace that and make that those swings accessible. And then Gibson Park, we have some surfacing repairs to the rubber surface there as well too, accessibility piece. Next slide, please. Next, Walter Bean Trail Development. We have another $90,000 in this budget. As I mentioned earlier, we have $300,000 in reserves to be used in 2030, and staff plan to continue to implement the trail implementation in collaboration with volunteer groups. I apologize. Can anyone hear a ringing on my end? No, maybe not. Yes. Okay. Can I have 1 second to go ask staff to turn the vacuum off if possible? Be right back. And now I'm out of breath, but we'll continue on. So Walter Bean, Jen, I think we're on the wrong slide there. One previous. Perfect, thanks. So trail development or trail bridge replacement. So the staff are carrying forward this from 2021 to address a deficient bridge on the Health Valley Trail, a footbridge that connects Waterloo and St. Jacobs. The bridge was constructed over 10 years ago by a volunteer group, and it was washed out. So we're looking to replace it with in as cost-effective a manner as possible. We have sought approval from the landowner and the city of Waterloo as well too. We've secured a trail agreement with them in 2021. Next, Lions Park Ball Diamond Lighting. As our most utilized ball diamond, staff are planning to update the lighting to Musco lighting, a standard that has been implemented across the township at the majority of our diamonds. The new poles and fixtures meet CSA standards, are LED and controllable by staff remotely, and staff have applied for a Trillium grant of $250,000 with a mandatory contribution of $50,000 if the township is successful. So staff will move forward with this project pending award or pending success of the grant funding. Conestoga Park, looking to pave that parking lot at $15,000. And the Elmira Nature Reserve, we have captured this in our capital budget, despite the majority of funding for this project being by donation. Next slide, please. Continuing with some accessibility audits to the tune of $30,000. So automatic door openers, some work at the Elmira operations yard, that sort of thing. Woolwich Memorial Center, 3 hot water heater replacements at $60,000. Elmira Union Cemetery columbarium at $45,000. So second phase of this project is to purchase and installation of the columbarium. Foundation was poured in 2021. Elmira Union Operations Yard. Parking lot at $90,000. So site works for this project include an expansion and repaving of the existing parking lot, as well as improving facility accessibility to the front entrance. LED lighting retrofits, continuing with the retrofit of our facilities in an effort to reduce hydro costs and greenhouse gas emissions. This project will entail a complete LED retrofit of the Breslaw Community Center, with any remaining funds being directed to the Woolwich Memorial Center. We have costed some work out, and the Breslaw Community Center to do the entire facility came back at just under $40,000. So the plan is to take care of that facility next year and then make our way back to the WMC. And the Bloomingdale Community Center parking lot paving at $240,000. This project was tendered in 2021, late 2021, as a part of the Infrastructure Services Snyder Flats paving. There was a minor addition to the scope, just being some added storm infrastructure for the site due to the size of the parking lot. Next slide, please, Jen. Breslaw Community Center generator, staff is aware of this project award, so that will be happening in 2022. 22 Mockingbird Drive architectural and demolition scope. So the first phase of this project is to entail the consultant scope, so primarily the architectural services, pending acquisition of the property. The intent is to repurpose the lands to accommodate additional parking for the park and a storage facility for township equipment. And I will speak to this project as well as the Woolwich Memorial Center plant replacement in the major capital slides as well. Conestoga Operations Yard exhaust system, this is being carried over. We are requesting a redistribution of some funds, some grant funds to cover added expenses for this project, but planning to move forward with that in 2022, funded by grants. And climate action initiatives. So $79,000 of remaining reserve funding for capital projects after allocations to operations related expenditures and other capital projects. Staff are in the process, as I mentioned, of obtaining consultant cost proposals for the environmental audits. And once those are complete, we will come back to council and propose projects from those audits. And then lastly, the Woolwich Memorial Center refrigeration plant replacement. So funding is being carried over again from 2021. One previous slide there, John. Staff have received an extension for the approximate $1.5 million grant and are awaiting federal scope approval prior to initiating the consultant portion in 2022. So there is still a final approval for this scope, and then we will move forward with the consultant piece. And I will touch on this project as well too on the next slide. So moving to the last slide, and then we're happy to take questions after that. Okay, Maryhill Fire Station. So our major capital budget. Valley Architects designed the renovated Maryhill Fire Station in collaboration with RCS and fire staff. The design includes repurposing of the original 2 center bays. So that's the gray side on the image to accommodate 2 washrooms, an office, bunker, gear room, and meeting room. The existing meeting room and office addition that was on the right of the facility will be demolished due to the slab foundation cracking. So that's where the entrance is located now. And then the left side will see an additional bay added on. That's the larger bay door of the 2. Staff note that due to increased construction costs as a result of rising inflation in the pandemic, funding in excess of the originally forecasted budget for 2022 is required. The project was tendered in December of 2021 with costing exceeding estimates provided to the township, and what is before you in the budget at $1.4 million. Similarly, for other projects tendered by our architect over the past year, including a recent fire station in Park Hill, bids are far exceeding past construction pricing for similar scopes of work. After an analysis of fire station construction projects throughout Ontario over the past 5 years, it is evident that the construction costs have increased substantially over that time. For reference, pre-pandemic construction costs for a new fire station build were approximately $250 to $300 a square foot, whereas the norm in 2021 is $500 per square foot. In anticipation of the rising costs, staff did opt for cost-saving measures throughout the design of the building wherever possible and not detrimental to the operations. Staff did need to include various fire health and safety standards such as the bunker gear room, as well as accessibility requirements. As a part of the bid submission review process, staff and Valley Architects have assessed all options and will be bringing forward an award recommendation to council on January 31st. So looking at funding for this project, the current budget before council was developed prior to tender closing. Hence, there is a current funding shortfall of approximately $300,000 to $400,000 over and above the $1.4 million, dependent on the award and potential cost-saving negotiations with the contractor, which staff will be engaging in the coming weeks prior to the 31st. As mentioned during the opening slide of this capital presentation, the budget that was developed and is before you is lean and extremely focused, with Maryhill Fire Station a clear funding priority. As a part of staff's recommendation on the 31st, we will be proposing the further deferral of certain capital projects from 2022 to offset the funding shortfall, including the majority of funding from the 22 Mockingbird project and the Woolwich Memorial Center plant replacement. Even with project deferrals, there will remain a significant funding requirement which may need to be required by further internal reserve deficits. As the message throughout the year, Maryhill Fire Station, along with the remainder of our capital projects program, are the needs of the township, and finding the necessary resources to carry out these needs is becoming more and more challenging. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the capital budget program for RCS.
Council, questions? Councillor McMillan and then Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Mayor Shantz. Not a question, just a comment. The Gibson Park tennis lights. I have to tell you, I was going for a walk the other night and it was 1 degree below zero and it was raining a little bit. And I walked by the tennis court and there was a guy out there playing. That tennis court, since we made it public and refurbished it, has been getting so much use. I can't believe the return on investment that we're getting out of that tennis court in Gibson Park. So I saw the lighting on there and just wanted to relay that story and say how much use our citizens are getting out of that.
Just a
Go ahead.
comment, if I may, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, you're true. It's been busy as ever, and I think that through the outdoor amenities long-term plan process, that's something that we are seeing is the need for not necessarily tennis courts, but dual purpose tennis and pickleball courts. So something that we are looking at. There's definitely been a resurgence of tennis from 20 years ago.
Awesome. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. A question for Thomas. You're spending $60,000 on 3 water heaters. Do all 3 need to be replaced at the same time? Or when do we determine that they need to be replaced if they're still functional today?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Martin. We have had one that's been down for the last year, and we have 3. We've had our plumbers take a look at them, and I think what's common throughout the region of Waterloo specifically is that water heaters don't last very long. They kind of have a 10-year lifespan, and the building is now 11 years old. So both are in need for replacement, or all 3 are in need for replacement before we have any more go down. On that topic as well, too, we are reaching a point, water heater maybe being the first kind of step, but we are seeing the need for replacement of major equipment at the Woolwich Memorial Center. We're 11 years in. A lot of our rooftop equipment, HVAC equipment, has a lifespan of 15 to 20 years. And as council can see in the 5-year forecast, we have certain pieces of equipment, our dehumidifier for the pool, for example, that in today's dollars is over $600,000, just quoted a few weeks ago. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments first, and then I have a question. First of all, I'm glad to hear that the tennis courts are being used. I was one that didn't want to do that work because I didn't think tennis was a thing anymore, but apparently it is, so that's good to hear. So I guess I'll eat my words there. Hidden Valley Trail, the bridge that is there, I'm glad to see that you're coming in with what I would consider a more reasonable cost on that. I think originally a number of years ago was at $100,000, and I see it's down to $25,000 now. So whatever that design is, I think that's a good design, obviously, because it's saving us some dollars. The fire hall in St. Mary's, or I should say Maryhill. That cost just blows me away, because they put up a new fire hall in St. Clements for 1.3, and I realize that's a couple of years ago and prior to COVID, but I just can't see spending that kind of dollars to repair a facility, especially when the one corner is sinking. The corner that's sinking, is that the corner that is being replaced with new, or is it the other corner that was in gray on your sheet there?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Shantz. So as a part of this evaluation process, we had the same questions that you're proposing tonight, in that would it be more cost-effective option to build new? There's definitely some, there's definitely pluses to it. We're not working within the confines of an existing building, and we can create some additional space. For example, in the existing bay that you can see that you would have seen in the drawing, is smaller than the new bay. Looking at the design that's been put together by Valley, the fire hall that we have designed new, based on today's cost per square foot, and looking at a number of fire halls throughout Ontario in the last 2 years, we would be looking at roughly $2.1 million plus additional architectural fees, because we're now working with a new building versus renovating one. So you're taking new versus existing and renovating. We are anticipating to see a savings of roughly $400,000. Which may not seem like a huge dollar figure, but when we're already looking at a building that's 1.7, been tendered at 1.7, and we're trying to find cost savings wherever we can, we're taking funding from other projects in the capital program. We've put forward a budget before you today too, we've already prematurely deferred a number of projects that we had planned for next year. We think it is worthwhile to proceed based on those factors with the renovation. And the portion that the portion of the building where the slab is cracked was on the right side of the building. So that was actually an addition to the fire hall. That's where the meeting space is now, and that part of the building will be demolished, and that's where the entrance is going to be located.
Okay, so going back to that drawing, so the red part is the old part and the gray part is the new part?
So the far left bay is the new bay. The bay on the right is the existing, and the gray portion is also existing. And then the far right will be demolished where the entrance is.
Okay, and then the other question I have is, I've heard that the bay that we're putting on is probably not big enough. Is that correct, or is it big enough for the trucks that we have?
To your Mayor Shantz, there, Councillor Shantz. The bay that we are putting on the far left is adequately sized. You can see in the image that the bay on the right is smaller than the new bay. So it's the existing bay, which was an addition to the building at one point. Is a few feet less than ideal in height and width. However, they do have a fire apparatus in that bay currently. And we've also reworked the space to open the walls as much as possible to allow for as best of passage by firefighters as we can accommodate with the renovation.
So do they have the fire trucks in the building now, or is one of the fire trucks not there at present?
Both fire apparatuses are in the station at the moment.
So if we were to defer this another year or two, do you think prices would come down that would make it more worthwhile to redo this and possibly build new rather than old, or no?
Do you have a crystal ball we don't know about, Larry?
We have had this discussion as well too. I think the consensus is that the prices never come down. This is the new norm. And when we do look, we've got 15 or so fire stations dating back from 2016 to 2022. It is a fairly gradual climb, cost per square foot, with a little bit of a bump in and around 2020, 2021. But we've got fire halls in front of us that were constructed in 2016, or the first LEED certified fire station in Ontario, constructed in 2017 at $280 a square foot.
Yeah, I guess whenever we're renovating old, and if it's the cost is that close, it scares me that we're doing the right thing, because of the fact that if you do new, then you can design it the way it should be designed rather than patchwork. So those are my comments. I guess I'm not sure I'm interested in spending $1.7 million on something that we could put brand new up for 2.1 possibly. It doesn't work in my books.
So would you, I think we're looking at funding this primarily from budget. Are you saying you would prefer to look at debenture and do a bigger project? Is that where you're going? Or are you just sort of making a comment, I guess?
I guess I'm making a comment and would welcome some other ideas from the rest of council, because I guess at this point it started out, I think originally at 700,000, and then it went to about 850, and now it's up to 1.7. So it keeps doubling and doubling and doubling. And I guess back when it was 700,000 or 850, it seemed more reasonable to rebuild. But once we get so close to brand new, I question whether it's worth it or not. But I'm open to hearing other conversations from council.
Councillor Merlehan, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Thank you. Through you, just to continue the conversation of Maryhill. I guess the point I wanted to make was, you were looking for all sorts of cost savings to bring, the price down and everything. And I would just have a word of caution and just say WMC as the word of caution for what happens when we cut all sorts of costs. And here we're replacing half the items in the WMC within the first couple of years of it being built. And I would hate to see that be part of this project. The other thing, I guess, is just piggybacking off of Larry's concerns. This project I think has been talked about since, at least probably before I got on council. So I know we've been talking about it not having any kind of funding source for so many years, and it was a lot cheaper back then. And so the likelihood that it's going to be cheaper next year is probably not going to be. And I really hate, I know the Maryhill Fire Department, they've been anxious to have, improved digs there for things. And I guess I would not really be too interested in postponing this particular project. And I guess the question would be whether or not we could fund this over two budget periods. I don't know when they're planning on starting to build or finish and when you get final invoices, but could we take part of the budget and of 2023 and commit 400,000 or something from that budget? And maybe that's a question for Richard.
Yeah, Mr. Patrick, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. So you, Madam Mayor, and I think Thomas may jump in a little bit, because we did have that discussion when we looked at the tender results, and I think for us, we were looking at it from the perspective of the way the tender was written. I don't think we really have the opportunity to do it over 2 years because it is going to be completed all this year, assuming council actually approves a tender. So I think the risk you're going to run is if you actually spread it over 2, you're probably going to see some price escalations because of that going into the next year, as well as I think you're also going to see some additional pricing from the architect as well, because they're going to have to spend additional time they weren't planning on next year to do this work. So I think you're going to see some price escalations if it starts to transition over 2 years. When I'm not so sure, Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not so sure the tender would quite allow that. That would have to be a negotiating factor, anyways.
Correct. Yeah. I don't know if there's opportunity, just to continue the conversation from a financing piece for it to bridge 2 years. But again, we would be looking at either some form of deficit in 2021 to cover those expenses to then later pay off in 2022 to 2023.
So like an internal financing type of arrangement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Brenneman, you wanted to jump in, and Councillor Redekop, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. A couple of points that I think we should put into the conversation. I would appreciate if Thomas might be able to give some history on the fact that when we compare the project a number of years ago, I think both staff and the architects would say this is a very more upscale renovation. And the other key piece that I think maybe our fire chief, Dennis Aldis, might need to speak to is when we look at our fire master plan and how we've actually designed our stations and that a number of years ago, you'll recall that we basically established a substation in Breslau. But what's going to happen as Breslau grows is that station will become more of the dominant station. Obviously, we know Breslau is going to rival Elmira in terms of population. So there, Dennis, our fire chief, I think can speak to the fact that in time, Breslau is going to be the main station. And I don't know how he would characterize Maryhill, but the bottom line is we're still going to need Maryhill long term. But the question then relates to, does it require a brand new station, or can we at least, to Councillor Shantz, your concern, can we at least though save some level of dollars by doing a really good renovation project? And whether we really do, when you look at the fire master plan long-term and the growth and development, and where Breslau is going to be, becoming much more the dominant station because of the growth and the calls, whether long-term it is the smart investment to do brand new. I think those are just relevant questions I'd like council to ponder as well as part of its discussions. And by all means, I think Fire Chief Aldis could participate in this discussion as well.
Councillor Redekop, were you commenting on the fire?
Yeah. I think the Maryhill firefighters, they're okay with this design, and they've waited a long time. So I would agree with Councillor Merlehan that this is the way to go, rather than delay it even longer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. The only concern that I would have, kind of hearing what Councillor Shantz said, when we decided to renovate as opposed to build new, there was one set of circumstances. And then as we've gone along the path, we've done a lot of work, and now the circumstances are different. And I just would want to make sure that we're not doing that sunk cost fallacy, that we've already put in all this work to renovate. And so we're going to keep going forward with that, regardless of what the new circumstances say. And so my question would be, if we started over from scratch today, is that good decision that we made a couple of years ago, is that still the good decision now? And are we just trying to avoid doing all that work for nothing? Because I think if the circumstances have changed dramatically, then I think we need to reinvestigate, is that still the right decision? And if it's not, we have to bite the bullet on what we've already put into it and just make the right decision for the circumstances that exist today.
Chief Aldis, do you want to weigh in on this at all?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. So with CAO Brenneman's comment about Breslau starting to become more of a dominant station. Currently, with our calls from 2021, they're actually the second highest behind Elmira, so they have starting to increase more and more and more. So I can see that station is getting busier, and I agree with Counsel, and our guys in Maryhill have been waiting for something to happen there for a number of years. I agree with Councillor Merlehan. It's before he came to council, so we need to do something, and it'd be nice that we can go forward with this project to give them the upgrade that they need there. So,
Are you satisfied that the project as it's outlined is adequate then?
yes, like I said, with I've been working with Thomas and the architect on this thing through the whole project, and I mean it's a very good building, so it'll suit the needs of the community for years going forward. So.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw a hand on the left side of my screen, which would be Pat or Larry. Did one of you put your hand up? Everybody's flipping around. Go ahead, Councillor Shantz.
I think Councillor Martin wanted to say something, so I'll let him weigh in before I do.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Murray. Sorry.
Thank you, Larry. When you look at rebuilding versus new, do you look out 5 or 10 years? Like when you rebuild, you might have to put a new roof on that building in 5 years, or a number of other things. Is that a consideration when you look at the two, which is the best option? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, through your motion, Councillor Burton. The renovation that we have that the architects have designed is as Mr. Brenneman has hinted to, it's almost a new building. We are keeping some structural walls and the slab on a good portion of the building, but for the most part, as we went through the process, there are components of the facility that are required now. We need to have a bunker gear room with adequate exhaust and that sort of thing. So mechanically, the building's been redesigned, and we've got an addition on, new facade, new roof, that sort of thing. We are, as we've looked at the two options, new versus renovate, and we've taken a good hard look at it. A significant driving factor in this is that the project that's before you today, we don't have sufficient funding for, and we've deferred a number of projects. So for us to then, add another $400,000 or more, because this would push into next year, would likely be spent doing another redesign, with construction occurring in 2023 if we were to go with a new build. We're not sure where we would be at that point once it's tendered. And you look out at our 5-year forecast, we're looking at 2023, 2024. We have some significant projects on the capital program that are unfunded at this point, to the tune of $307,000 in 2023 and $675,000 in 2024. So funding is a major driving factor for our decision and what we will bring before council on the 31st to proceed with the renovation.
Okay, if you can, I've heard it several times that this renovation will be almost a new building. I'm fine with that. It is still a lot of money to spend on a substation where I think 2 years ago, they only got 40 calls. I know there's new regulations about where you've got bunker gear and all that kind of stuff, but 1.7 or better is just a lot of money. And one reason this project didn't get going is because before any of you were here, I think there was 2 councils in the past that voted not to spend $700,000 on that building. And then later on, we had, I believe, Fry Brothers look at it and said, oh no, pretty solid building. We can renovate this for $700,000. A year later, it was $800,000. And we were told year after year, yeah, it's imperative that we do it right away because it's health and safety things there. I was told last spring that It had been tendered this past fall, and they're going to start and then finish it this spring, and we're still not there. So I don't want to drag it on too long, whichever way we go, and get it done. But then my next question is, we still have another station where a lot of the same things are going to fall into place. No room for training, hardly any room for trucks, and that's in my town. What do you plan to do there?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Martin. I don't know if Mr. Chief Audits may want to chime in on this. The next priority that we have on the capital plan on the 5-year forecast from a fire hall perspective is the Elmira fire station to do some work there. We've got that in 2024, 2025, I believe, likely unfunded at this point. Again, we're going to be in a similar situation to requiring, an additional bay, the addition of meeting space, allowing for the facility to be accessible, that sort of thing. So we are aware, staff are aware of all of these priorities. It's just determining, what we proceed with each year with the funding we have.
Councillor Shantz.
Okay, I'm in no way suggesting that we don't do the work. So I want to make that clear, and I'm glad to hear that the chief is okay with the design. If he's okay with the design, I guess that's what we have to go with his expertise. So I just am uncomfortable when they get that close, I guess, and I just wanted to make the opinion that or the comment that I was concerned about it being so close to noon.
I think there've been a couple of comments, just sort of cautions to make sure that we don't cut too many corners, that we're still having a reasonable product when we're finished. Chief Audits, excuse me, did you want to weigh in again?
Madam Mayor, actually, like Thomas is correct. Our next one that is in our forecast is for Elmira, because it's another building that is in about the same age as what Maryhill is. So yes, and then to Councillor Martin's comment about Conestoga, I know and Thomas can verify this, we've done some repairs to it as it is and made a few upgrades. I don't know where that sits in our capital forecast to do anything with it. That's a small lot, and I don't know if we can renovate it any further than we have, but it's something we can look into most definitely.
I think that's something for down the road in the capital forecast, and maybe we don't need to get into that tonight, but something certainly to keep on our radar. Is there anything else on the capital budget? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Or Councillor Merlehan, you had one more?
Yeah, sorry, through you. I just wondered if you could expand on the 22 Mockingbird. I know Council was brief, but just to bring it out in public about the storage facility where the old daycare center used to be in Elmira. If you can just talk about that particular project, just so it's public.
Absolutely, through your Mayor Shantz to Councillor Merlehan. So the property located at 22 Mockingbird Drive is currently owned by the region of Waterloo. They are in the process of declaring this property surplus, and that surplus needs to go before regional council for approval. The township has been working with the region and are looking to acquire that property due to the current state of the facility, requiring in excess of $350,000 an initial investment, roof replacements, HVAC equipment, that sort of thing, to get it to an operational state, and also the fact that it is a daycare through and through with a number of rooms, plumbing fixtures for children, that sort of thing, classroom style. Staff are proposing to move forward in 2022 with retaining an architectural consultant to take a look at this property and do the legwork in advance of 2023 to demolish the facility, add additional parking to Park Manor, provided that that park only has 12 or 13 parking stalls and which is not adequate for its current use, being that Woolwich minor soccer youth, that's their main hub for the summer. And then also adding a storage facility for township staff. We currently rent a storage facility, as does infrastructure services, and we have been for the last 10 years at a cost in today's dollars of roughly $10,000 a year. We have outgrown that storage, similar to as IS is outgrowing their storage, and they've had to acquire additional storage. So a storage facility here fits within the zoning, is approved by the region of Waterloo as well too. They're fine with that use, and we feel it would be good reuse of the property. I had actually mentioned earlier in the presentation, and I failed to touch on it. But just with Maryhill Fire Station, we are looking to scale back the budget for 22 Mockingbird in 2022, as well as the Woolwich Memorial Center plant replacement. Scaling back the 22 Mockingbird site to as necessary to find some funds for Maryhill Fire Station. So scaling that back from $130,000 to $50,000, and then scaling back the Woolwich Memorial Center plant replacement as well to that is budgeted at $150,000. Give me 1 second here. I just want to find my notes. So I have a total of 170 deferred from both the WMC plant replacement and 22 Mockingbird. Similar situation with the plant replacement. We would look to do just the consultant piece in 2022, followed by construction in 2023. So both of those projects, no construction to occur next year. And as a result, reducing those budgets to find $170,000 to put towards Maryhill Fire Station.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, will there be an opportunity for the public in that area to comment on the proposed storage facility?
Through Mayor Shantz, Councilor Merlehan, absolutely. Staff would write that into our RFP or tender process for the consulting services with the architect. That would form a component of that work.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, through you to Thomas. You're saying you're scaling back the WMC, the plant, and that was grant money as well, or is that a different part of the project? And I'm just concerned about losing that grant. It's already been pushed back.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Shantz. So staff, due to the pandemic, staff have received, or the grant, there's been a grant extension all the way through to 2028, I believe. We don't plan on capitalizing on it for that period of time. We're hoping to get the work started next year. There is grant funding available with $1.5 million with a $500,000 requirement coming from the township.
Okay, thank you.
Just before we leave the WMC plant, just to confirm that there's no safety issues with that, that could be that we're fixing some safety issues with that plant replacement that are going to be put off. I just want to ensure that's not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. No, staff have worked with some engineers and our preventative maintenance contractor to put in some temporary solutions for the issues that we were having that have held us over the last year and should hold us over for another year or two before we can get the plant replaced.
Okay, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our discussion on the capital budget. Unless Mr. Petherick, do you have anything else before we move on to fire?
To you, Madam Mayor, I think the only one is just kind of like what we did with infrastructure services. There are just a couple of vehicles on the equipment side of things, that there are a trailer replacement for RCS as well as a new mid-size truck that they're proposing. The mid-size truck is going to be funded from development charges.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to fire, but I'm going to suggest a 5-minute, 7-minute break. We'll come back at 8:20 just to give everybody a stretch. I think we'll get started again. Councillor McMillan, are you close at hand? Okay, I think we're going to move along. I'm sure Scott will be with us in a moment. Chief Aldis, the floor is yours to talk about the operating budget for fire.
Yes, Madam Mayor, before we get started, I'd like to, we introduced him already to council, but to introduce our general public, our new Deputy Chief, Craig Eveson, and I'd give him an opportunity to speak while I'm get my PowerPoint ready to come up for you.
Okay, welcome to Woolwich, Deputy Chief Eveson.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Give me the thumbs up when you're good to go. For everyone that's tuning in, since last time I did this, I'm Craig Eveson. I've been a firefighter for about 20 years. I've gone to school for it, like post-secondary, Dalhousie, and more recently Humber College. I'm excited to be here. Excited to serve the people of Woolwich Township, and you know, I'm a family man. I got 3 boys, lovely wife, cottage, bills, mortgages, and you know, just your regular guy that happens to like running into burning buildings for some crazy reason. But other than that, that's me in a nutshell. I welcome people to send me an email if you have any questions, or you know, drop by and say hi once COVID decides it wants to leave, hopefully soon. All right, Madam Mayor, back to you. Thank you.
All right, so I'll get this, let's see if this works. All right, so now everyone can see my screen. I'm new to this. I'm technologically challenged, unfortunately, so.
So far, so good.
Okay, so in our fire services budget for 2022, why is this not? Just an idea of how many calls we ran last year. So we ran a total of 577 calls across the township. This is an important fact because it is one of the biggest driving forces behind our operating budget for wages. So for our operating budget, I have 3 highlights listed here for you. So we're looking at a 7% wage increase for our volunteer firefighters. It's been a little while since we did a wage study, and we found that we were a little bit behind our neighbors. So we're just trying to do a little bit of catch up for them. And we're looking at doing an increase to our officer pays, which is the same idea. With the amount of work and extra work that they have to put in being considered a supervisor under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, a little bit more compensation for them to accept that position. We're looking at an increase to our P25 radio systems, our annual costs. It's around $115,000 this year. And another one that I neglected to put on this slide is we're adding $50,000 to our vehicle reserve fund. This is because our vehicle costs seem to be keep escalating. So every year they keep going up and up and up. Beyond that, through our budget process, we've just added a few things to our facilities and that to try and catch up for deficits, because our facilities are getting older, like Maryhill, and they need to add a few more repairs to them. So it's just small little things like that. Do you have any questions on our operating budget?
If you can stop screen sharing, then I can see everyone.
Okay, just see, I'm technologically challenged. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Thanks. Are there questions for Chief Aldis? Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Under administration, you have $3,800 in for mileage, and last year the actual was $92. We've never been close to $3,800. So is that number realistic?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Martin, it can be realistic. unfortunately, because of COVID, mileage hasn't been used going to courses or even for our CMC Avril Tanner to go back and forth to meetings and stuff because he's used their own personal vehicle. So we're keeping that amount of money there on the chance that we end up having to pay that out.
Okay, that's a good answer. And
Other
under,
question? Oh, go ahead, Murray.
I just one more question. Being like trucks, under vehicle equipment maintenance, is that more than just the trucks or is that the trucks?
Is you're looking at go ahead.
The reason I ask is because Conestoga's costs are higher than Elmira, and Elmira's got twice as many vehicles.
Is that on the, like in the administration line, or are you looking
No,
at
that's
Conestoga's
under
hall?
one Conestoga station. That number just jumped out at me because if you go to the next page under Elmira station, they're actually less money and they got twice as many trucks.
So depending if it's in the wage line or if it's in the,
It's under vehicle equipment.
so for the operating costs for them, we have in, it was around, I think we had to do some extra work to their rescue, which is up for replacement this year because it's an aging vehicle. So we spent, the actual was 8,000 and we had budgeted in for 6,000 for that. For vehicle repairs and maintenance in Conestoga. And then in Elmira, the vehicle repairs and maintenance is actually set for like $25,000. So it's more than larger there, so. Unless you're looking at their wage line. And that just be the way they do their truck checks.
Yeah,
So
I
just
don't,
people
I
at a
just-
meeting when they do it.
it's just under the same line as in Conestoga, and yet Elmira's less.
Do you, are you looking where, excuse me, where it says vehicle equipment maintenance, Murray, or are you looking where it
Yes.
says?
Yeah.
So that's under staff costs,
Yeah,
Dennis. Yeah.
yeah. So they just have, just Conestoga may have had more people out doing their truck checks
Okay,
than what the others. I'm just, because there's two different lines that are very similar. One's in staffing costs and one's actually in the cost to do the repairs and maintenance.
okay.
Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you to Chief Audits. At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that the total calls was 557. I'm just wondering, compared to other years, is that more or like fewer calls than you would? And I'm just wondering if there's been any difference in that number because of, you know, people being at home, less people being on the road and such.
Through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Merlehan, it's a little bit higher than what we've had in previous years, but because of the way COVID has been running the last couple of years, we've reduced our tiered response calls for certain parts of it. So it reduces the amount of calls we go out. So it's hard to compare from year to year to year to year. But last year, as being a full year compared to 2019, we're up maybe 10 to 15 calls overall.
Okay, so you're not seeing a drastic difference from year to year based on, you know, the growth in the township in that regard?
It's more been just a steady increase. Like it's just over the year, like I said, you can see we've been growing 15, 20 calls a year. Like it is getting more, but it's not a drastic 500 calls or 100 calls extra.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering in relation to the amount of, that insurance thing, that if there's an accident, you kind of go after people outside of the area to collect from insurance companies. I think, I don't know, was the number up? I had it, I was looking at it and I kind of forget where it was at in comparison to other years, but I know it was a problem years ago, and then there was some workaround into figuring out how to contact insurance companies to be reimbursed for those fees. I'm just wondering if that's still program is working well, and what basically what kind of recovery rate we're getting on those.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Merlin, it's doing quite well. Like we're averaging in the 90 to over the $100,000 mark since we started it. So it's, for us, it is a substantial amount of added revenue. Excuse me, especially with our call volumes is, so for Breslau as an example, there's more and more car accidents happening out on Highway 7. So there's more opportunity for us to bill out there. So it's a good revenue source for us. I think it's around, we're projecting close to $120,000 this year. So.
Okay. And then the only other thing that jumped out, and it's,
Before you move on, I think Mr. Petherick just wants to
sure.
weigh in on the insurance piece.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just to the other part of Councilor Merlehan's question, I think having the opportunity to be able to garner the information of the insurance, like the insurance carriers for the people involved in the accidents, that's the piece we were missing before. But actually being able to obtain that information is what's helping from a collections perspective, because yeah, you go right to the insurance company and, to them, this is kind of what they do. So they do respond, as opposed to sometimes when you have to send it to a person, then turn your hope in and you're directing them to send it to their insurance company. And sometimes they don't. That's where it became really challenging. But having that insurance information now makes the collection so much easier.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. And then just the last thing, and it was just, I don't know if it's an anomaly, but the Elmira station, just the fuel was like $8,000, and normally you budget like $5,000 or $5,500 or something every year. I'm just wondering, was that gas prices going up, or was there some particular thing this year that it went a couple of $1,000s more than usual?
Through Councilor Merlin, some of it is the cost of fuel. I think that's been going up, and it's the amount of calls that they have been running. Like, I imagine you're well aware that the fuel tanks at the Public Works Yard were removed at one point, and we had to go to an outside source to get fuel for a while, and that increase will be built into that as well. So it's more expensive to buy it from somebody else than it is from ourselves. So
okay,
the per liter cost is higher, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just wondering why you budgeted then like 5,500, and last year was like 83 or 82 or something. Forget offhand.
It's just a projection. Like I sat back and we weighed the options on what the fuel prices are going to be, and we can't speculate or even how many calls we're going to run. So it's just to keep it fair across the board, I guess. It's something I should look at a little bit closer, and I didn't. But that's, like I said, fuel costs I can't predict. So
sure. Okay. And then I guess with the calls, does Elmira, I mean, you said it before, Elmira gets the bulk of the calls, and then Breslau is number 2. Between Elmira and Breslau, with out of the 557 calls, would they take like 400 of them between the two, or?
Through Madam Mayor to count Merlin, not quite. It's well over 200, and it's over 220 anyways, 250 maybe.
Okay, just for Elmira?
No, for the two of them. So they're
okay.
running about 100 and I forget now how about. I think Breslau was 130 some, and Elmira was 150 some. I'd have to look at my
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
that screen to do what I'm doing here, so.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks for answering this.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments and then a question, I guess. First of all, I'd like to thank the firefighters for doing the job that they do, because we really rely on them. And, they get out all hours of the night and on weekends and things like that when everybody else is sleeping. So they do an excellent job. So I don't begrudge giving them a decent raise and bring them up to the other area firefighters because of the job that they do for us. One question I do have for the chief, and maybe he can just respond to it. You talked about the tiered system changing because of COVID, and we're not going on as many calls. And I wonder if you could just explain to the public what type of calls we would actually go to and what we used to and we're not going to now. I did have a call and somebody was questioning that and just was wondering, they said, if my child is choking, would the firefighters go out or not? So I guess if you could just explain what the tiered responses are for the firefighters now.
So through Madam Mayor to Councillor Shantz, with the direction of Waterloo Regional with EMS and all 7 municipal fire chiefs and fire departments and the unions, in order to, with the Omicron variant going as wide as it is, we thought it was best to try and protect our the supply chain and everything for what we need, and to allow our fire departments to step back from doing some of the medical calls that we were doing in order to facilitate if EMS did get into an issue, that we'd be able to step up and move back into calls that they needed us for. So currently across the region, all the fire departments were doing vital sign absence calls, industrial and farm accidents, car accidents, and then anything that ambulance is delayed for 15 minutes or greater. And then anything that they need our assistance to, so they can call us to anything. It's a little step back from what we were doing before, but like I said, it was under the direction of Waterloo Regional EMS as to where we went to with what we were doing. But we still respond to all our CO calls, all our fires, anything like that concerns our citizens that way. So.
Okay, so you're saying that it's the same as what the cities are doing as well, and the townships, or are they all doing exactly the same thing right across the region?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Chief Aldis? No? Okay, we do have a fire capital budget too. Did you want to speak to that yet, Chief?
Yes, we'll get to that in a second. Technology is not really working for me, so. So with our capital budget, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, so with our capital budget, with the Mary Hill renovation, we are budgeting $25,000 for a bunker gear washer and dryer for the new facility. We're budgeting $30,000 for some upgrades to our P25 radio system. Through everything that's been going on and with our buildings we have in here, we're going to make some upgrades to a system for St. Jacobs and Breslau. With St. Jacobs, it deals with home hardware because of the size of it and the base of construction. It gives us some issues in there. And Breslau, with continual growth with multi-level apartment buildings and condos, we need a little extra stuff, another piece of equipment for in there. Our annual bunker gear replacement is set for $25,000 and a computer software upgrade of $10,000, which replaces the system we're on now, which is still run off the Internet Explorer base. So it's on its way out, as anybody who knows anything about computers will know. And also in our capital fleet replacement is we have the Conestoga Rescue. We're starting the construction in the tendering process in 2022, but because now with, I hate to say COVID, but it's probably not just COVID, but when you're building a fire truck, it's now going from 300 days to 350 days to 400 days, and I'm hearing as far as 440 days. So the project is starting in 2020, but the payment will not be going out until 2023 when we get the truck. So that's where you see a bit of a change on the capital as the way it's sitting as it is. That's all I have for capital. So if there's any questions.
Questions, Council? Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Chief Aldis. The upgrades on the radio system, is that just adding some towers or something so that you can get radio signal? I'm just wondering because we just spent a boatload on that whole system not that long ago. And just if you could speak a little more to that.
So what they are, through Mayor to Councilor Merlehan, it's digital. It's a digital repeater system. So it allows us, if we get into a building that's of a dense construction like solid concrete and steel, that it gives us the opportunity to extend our range of our portables and the strength of them. So we're adding, so when we go into a place like Home Hardware, which is a massive building, once we get into the middle or get down into the basement, it'll allow us to talk back out to the system. So that's what we're looking at upgrading. It's two systems like that, one for Breslau and one for St. Jacobs. So it's enhancements to the system for what we have now, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions on the capital, so I would echo my thanks as well to all of our firefighters and all the excellent work they do. And thanks, Chief Aldis, and welcome, Deputy Chief Eveson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thanks. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I will turn the floor over to Mr. Petherick to summarize what we've done today for us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So essentially, I think it's really discussions that are going to be had kind of outside or past the budget, and I know Mr. Smith and his staff have captured Council's comments. I know the one in particular is talking about subsidies and having future discussions on that, but nothing really that that was definitive in this budget process, unless there was something that I missed.
Okay, I guess the only piece that that I'm thinking about is the Maryhill Fire Station and the potential overrun, but I think that sounds like it'll be part of the discussion next Thursday when we have our budget discussion and how we want to handle that.
True, and through you, Madam Mayor, that discussion will also be continuing on when we get into the potential tender award later this month as well. Okay.
Thanks. Is there anything else that Council wants to ensure was captured from tonight? Okay. Very good. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn to meet again in special session on Monday, January 17th, again at 6 o'clock. Councillor McMillan, Councillor Shantz, all those in favor? And that is carried. And I will say thank you to everyone who tuned in to watch our budget discussion this evening. Council members, remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And good night.